kick off today, we have something super exciting planned for everyone here. We have Dr. Scott V. Anderson, our keynote speaker. With over 15 years of experience in strategic management, he is the Senior Principal for Research and Analytics at Prosci.
Thank you.
He leads Prosci's research in areas such as AI adoption, leadership development, and executive engagement. And to contextualize AI and change management in the Indian landscape, we have Krish, Marg's very own head of training and consulting. He brings 30 plus years of leadership experience across sectors like energy, technology, and financial services. So Arun, as you said, today is more about than just listening. It's about engaging, reflecting, and reimagining what transformation can look like in your world. So get ready for some bold insights, honest dialogue, and the energy of a room full of people ready to lead the future. Welcome to SYNAPSE 2025.
Woohoo! All right, with that, let's begin SYNAPSE. Scott, I hand over to you. Scott V. Anderson is, heading the research and analytics at Prosci. Scott, over to you. The stage is yours. Thank you for being with us.
Fantastic. Thank you. I recall a time about 10 years ago when I'd been invited to a meeting, and in this meeting, a team was going to present a project to the CEO. The team had been working on this project for about 2 years, and it involved a major restructuring of a major system. They had gone through all the due diligence to go out and do their process optimization work to figure out where they needed to fix the system, what they were going to do about it, how they were going to address it, and then which system they were going to bring in. It started with 16, went down to 8, went down to 4, went down to 2, and now it was down to 1. And that was the presentation they were making to the CEO, was for that one final one that they had decided on. They went in, I remember it clearly walking into the room. I sat down against the wall, and then the project lead started to present their selection of the tool moving forward. The CEO stopped the project lead and said, I'm just curious, have we stopped to see how well this system will play with our partner systems? And immediately, the temperature in the room changed. Immediately, there were people who started saying, you know what, that was a concern that I brought up, but we weren't able to address it. And somebody else said, well, yeah, we thought like the other number 2 selection that we were going to go with, that might have been the best one. What I saw happen was in about 8 seconds' time, 2 years of work was tanked. 2 years of work was brought to nothing in about 8 seconds. And I walked out of there thinking, wow, what a learning experience. What an expensive learning experience. And I don't know if you can identify that, where you've worked on these projects, you've got a lot that you're investing in a lot of projects, only to see that you don't achieve the full ROI that you expected. I saw that day, and as I walked out, somebody else who knew that I was interested in change management, they just made the comment to me and said, you know what? And that is why we do change management. That is why we need to make sure that we've got executives who are bought in and understand and they're following up with it. And that's why we make sure that we're coordinating with all the teams. So to me, it was a fantastic learning experience. Now, we're standing on the precipice of incredible things with AI today. We're at a place where so many of us are here today because we want to figure out how to do AI right. That's a change we can't afford to not get right. With that said, there is one foundational belief that I have about AI, and I believe it so strongly that I even quoted myself in a quote. And it's simply this: AI won't change organizations. People who use AI will. Think about it. It's not the AI that you're going to come in and just drop in the organization and magically it's going to make everything better. That AI is driven by people, and it's the people who will make a difference through the AI that we can help to introduce. So I am thrilled to be part of SYNAPSE, to bring together this group of thinkers and people who are invested in figuring out how we do AI right. There's something about change done right versus change done wrong, and it feels a whole lot better when you get it right. So, a little bit about Prosci and who we are. By way of introduction, we were founded in the United States in Colorado by an engineer who worked at Bell Laboratories. Basically, he was looking at a lot of projects across the organization, and he noticed that some of the projects were succeeding and some weren't. And being insatiably curious, he said, what's the difference? What's going on here between those that work and those that don't? Eventually, after looking at multiple projects, he identified a pattern. And what he basically saw was that the projects that succeeded were the ones who engaged the people side of change, who brought the people along. Eventually, he came up with the ADKAR model of change that came from his work that he had done. That led on to then beginning to engage companies, to building a business around it, to then building a methodology, to building tools, to building different resources to help other organizations as they were managing the people side of their changes. So we have, as you can see, we've been doing research for 25 years, 12 big studies that we've done over that time, and I think that number is actually closer to 150,000 people who have been trained and certified in Prosci's change management methodology worldwide. As we look here, we have a lot of Prosci direct regions that we serve, and then we work closely with our partners where we don't have those direct markets for them to represent the local regions. In this case, it is an absolute honor to be sharing the stage with Marg. This is incredible. They are committed to the principles of Prosci and are fantastic partners. There's something magic that happens when you start operating in this space where you bring together 25 years of research on change management. That is thousands and thousands of people that we've gone out to and asked them simply, how do you succeed in change? And these are real people working on real projects. These aren't people in a lab somewhere kind of telling us theoretically. They're on the ground doing the work, telling us what works and what leads to change success. When you combine that with this individual role enablement, helping executives do what they need to, and mid-level managers and frontline employees to understand their roles, and you take that last piece of getting an entire enterprise capable of doing that, you unlock something incredibly special. That's what I hope we can do today with us here, that we can help you to unlock that and take a step towards that. So when we talk about building this enterprise change capability, let me just make sure that I'm level setting here, that we're all on the same page about what change management is, and when we think about it, what we're talking about. When we look and talk about going through any kind of a change, we know that there are going to be three stages. There's the current state, there's a transition state to where you want to be, to where you are as you're moving through, and then you've got your future state. With that, we have the technical side of that change, and by technical, we don't just mean technological. We just mean the actual change that is going to be happening. Typically, that part where they're designing, developing, and delivering the actual solution, that's on the project management side of the house. So we typically look to the project managers to say, how are you going to actually design, develop, and deliver this solution? Now, on the other side, we have the people. And it's that journey of bringing the people along in the change where we get them to engage, adopt, and use the change. And that's where change management happens. That's the people side of change. So once we have the technical side and we can combine that with the people side and bring those together, that's where we achieve the change success. In kind of really simple terms, this is the way we think about it at Prosci. Project management prepares the solution for the organization. Change management prepares the organization for the solution. You've got to have both pieces if you're going to succeed in any kind of change. From a change management perspective, we can talk about it simply as applying change management to a single project, working hand in hand with project managers. And that's kind of compared, if you look on the back of this slide, to maybe building a single house. But there's also a bigger picture, and that's more of what we're focused on today. How do you build that enterprise change capability? And this is looking at this structured and intentional deployment of change management across an entire organization. That's what we're focused on here. So when we talk about organizations and where they are today and what's happening in organizations, as some of our research, we went out and asked individuals, how saturated are your organizations with change? How much change do you have going on? And is it too much to where people can't even absorb it all? What they said was that 75% of organizations are at, near, or past that point of saturation. What they're telling us is there are way too many changes happening. Like we can't even go through the changes effectively. Additionally, we asked, what do you see going on with the trends of change? And 88% of organizations expect the amount of change to increase slightly or significantly over the next 2 years. Now, we asked this before AI came along. You can imagine what the impact of AI is now on the expectations of change happening. So what are we seeing and supporting? And this is part of the methodology, the kind of work that we see: enterprise resource planning, we see mergers and acquisitions, we see customer relationship management systems, maybe it's reorganizations. There are all sorts of changes that we support from a change perspective. And then along came AI. And now that's where we are today. We've got to figure this out. We've got a few questions. Is this just another one of those technology changes? Is it like any other technology change we've gone through? Or is there something fundamentally different about this change? The second thing that we need to figure out is, either way, how do we help individuals and organizations to adopt AI in a really successful way? That's what we're here to talk about, to move us towards more successful adoption of AI. So I'm going to get into now, talking a little bit more about what does this mean. There are a few ways that we think about the way we have to think about AI. Number one, AI is not an oracle. You can't just go up to AI and expect that you can ask it any question and it'll immediately give you the perfect answer. We prefer to think about it as a really smart intern, and you can work with that intern, but it still needs guidance, direction, sometimes feedback, correction to say, no, that's not quite right. You didn't quite get it. Part of this is making sure that we've got the right mindset when we're engaging AI. Number two, a lot of people are over here in kind of this space of saying, how do we get AI to summarize an email or to create an email for me or generate? We're looking at it and saying, that's a great start to AI, but that's not where we want to end up. Where we really want to end up is, how do we start partnering with AI as a digital collaborator? That's the goal we're going for. That's what we're trying to figure out here. Lastly, another way that we can think about organizational adoption of AI, you can take it and break it into two parts. On the one hand, you can think about these tailored technologies. And these are the conversations organizations are having about which technology should we actually bring in. Will it be AI LLM number one? Will it be number two, number three? What are we going to actually bring in? The other side of that, though, isn't about the technology. It's actually about the proficiencies that we're going to start building in our people. So when we start looking at that, that's about how do we develop this workforce that's very adept in AI that can change and move with whatever the AI changes may be. That's the space where this partnering with digital collaboration lives. So does AI adoption matter? Let's maybe get back into that basic question. Do we really have to face this now? I've got a few statistics that I want to share with you. Number one, and this was from a McKinsey partner on a Microsoft conversation. The Delphine Zerkia said, invest twice as much in change management and adoption as in building the solution. Think about that, twice as much in the people. The Boston Consulting Group, they suggest the 10-20-70 AI investment principle. So we've got invest 10% in your algorithms, invest 20% in the technology, and then they say invest 70% in the people and processes. Now, I can guess that a lot of organizations are flipping that around and not getting that same attention. And you can see here, this corresponds really well to what I mentioned earlier about the technical side of change and the people side of change. Finally, there was one, the individual, Stacy Winters with Deloitte, who said, one of my clients was considering taking 80% of their IT budget and spending it on change management. Now, this isn't the only person to say 80%. I've seen that from other leading voices in the AI space that say, yeah, it's really got to be a priority to get this people side of change. So what we asked then, I have the privilege, being the head of the research of Prosci, to try to figure out what then are the conditions in an organization that will lead to successful adoption of AI. That's essentially what we set out to understand. So we put together a research project, and we had some key questions that we were asking. First, what are people's reasons for using AI? Second, what are the biggest challenges that they're facing? And third, how do you know if AI is helping? Is it really making a difference in your organization or not? So we took some of these basic questions along with a couple others, and we went out and we talked to 193 executives who told us about their experience at the executive level. We talked to 389 team leaders who told us about how they're implementing AI on their teams. And then we talked with 525 individual frontline employees and these team leaders and these executives for a total of 1,100 participants in this study. Some of the questions that we asked about were, how are they introducing and learning about AI? What's their interaction with AI, their experience there? We talked about governance and control. How's that being managed in their organizations? How are they implementing AI, their approach? Then, for those team leaders, we asked them an additional series of questions. We asked them about how are they aligning what they're doing on their teams in terms of AI with what the organization is doing. We asked them about how they're developing people in their teams with AI. And then finally, how are they practically using it? Then, for those executives, we asked them specifically about what are they doing in terms of AI strategy? What are they doing to develop skills across the organization in AI? What are they doing to build capacity? And then lastly, how much of the external and competitive influences are driving their use of AI? Are they doing it because they're seeing the world around them doing it and they're afraid to get behind? Or do they have other motives behind that? So what we did was, with a lot of these, and I know you can't read the details, but after we started looking at the data and plotting it, we were able to see some trends that came up. So, for example, this is everybody talking about individual AI usage. And you can see over here, for example, we asked who chooses the AI tools you use at work. And on one side, they could respond and say, well, my organization chooses, or they could say, I choose. And this was interesting to see where the averages came up. That was interesting. But when it got really exciting was when we took the next step. We had also asked them, how well are things going in your implementation? Is it going really smoothly or is it not? And when we overlaid that on the responses, we started seeing some patterns here. We started seeing where there was a big difference between those that had smooth implementations and those that were really struggling. So basically what we ended up with were these conditions of these smooth implementations in AI. So we saw some things like strong direct support from executive leadership. We saw AI proficiency being spread across the organization, transparency in decision-making. We saw measured data openness. We saw larger, more transformative approaches to AI. We then took all of this and we put it together into a single framework where we can then think about the 20 conditions for change success in your organization. As we're talking about these and as I'm presenting those 20 conditions, I hope that throughout today you're looking for those, that you can start seeing these themes that will weave throughout today's conference, throughout this time together. So, to give you a sense, an overview of what those are, we've got 5 categories and 20 conditions. The categories are leadership and bold AI vision. That's the first area you have to pay attention to. The second thing, change management excellence. The third category that we look at is transparency and trust. The fourth category that we're looking at is the organizational capabilities that we're developing around AI. And then the fifth category we call these cross-cutting challenges across organizations. So I am going to go into each of these just briefly. When we look at leadership and bold AI vision then, the first thing we're looking at is senior leadership commitment. So are they really committed? Okay, the second condition that we're looking at in leadership and bold AI vision, are they communicating about it frequently? Are they actually telling the organization about the importance of it? The third thing we looked at is, are they balancing the needs today with the long-term strategic vision of where they need to be with AI? And then the final thing that we look at is leadership participation. This one is an interesting one to me because in Prosci's research, in all 12 of Prosci's last major studies, we've gone out and asked them, what are the top contributors to change success? The number one response has been active and visible sponsorship. That has been super consistent. And what we see is that has a direct correlation to project success. So we can see that when you have a very ineffective sponsor, the likelihood of exceeding or meeting your objectives is about 27%. So if your sponsor is not effective, maybe 1 in 3 of your projects will succeed. Now, when you have an extremely effective sponsor who's engaged, that jumps up to 79%. So quite a difference when you get that executive engagement from sponsors. Number 2 category that we're looking at, change management excellence. The first thing that we look at in this is a structured change approach. And you may say, what exactly does a structured change approach look like? What does that mean? At Prosci, the way we think about it is simply that we provide a repeatable process that people can work through. And I look at this and I say, in a lot of ways, it's pretty simple. Like, we get in and we define success. What are we trying to achieve here? Who has to do their jobs differently? How? What will it take to achieve success? From there, we move into managing the change, planning and acting, tracking the performance, adapting actions, and then we move into sustaining outcomes. The project doesn't finish when it's launched. The project finishes when you're achieving the outcomes that you intended to achieve with it at the beginning. And so we have a process, a structured process to help people to achieve that. The next part in change management that we look at, the next condition, is adaptive implementation. Are we adapting to what we're hearing along the way? The next piece is a culture of experimentation. And this one is to the point where you may even need to actively have executives encourage employees to experiment, to get in and actually play with it and try to figure things out. And then finally, the last part of that change management excellence, the last condition we look at is just having effective training and support for the employees going through the changes. The next area we look at is transparency and trust. When you look and say, what is the environment of transparency or trust within your organization? That's one conversation. It may be high or low. When you add AI into that, it becomes a little different. Do you trust AI? Do you trust the output of AI? So what we're looking at here is openness in decision-making. That's one of the first conditions. Number 2 is this responsible use guidance. And this is where you have those guidelines for the organization. One of the comments that's made by Tim Creasy, and he's our Chief Innovation Officer, he said, no one ever smuggled a CRM to work in their pocket. And when you think about it, it is really interesting because nobody's going to bring a CRM to work, but how many of us carry these around and we can bring it in and we've got a question and we just go down and say, ChatGPT, what should I do? it's a little different. It needs to have that governance in place for the proper use. The next thing that we're looking at here is responsiveness to concerns. And then finally, that shared AI trust, just generally trusting AI with minimal skepticism. The fourth area that we're looking at here is organizational capabilities. What we're talking about here are the democratized AI skills. So across the organization, people have the opportunity to learn about it. We're looking at sufficient internal expertise. Do we have people who know about this stuff that we can ask questions to? Integration into KPIs. I'm not going to go into this one a whole lot, but I will suggest, if you see that QR code up in the right-hand corner, we've gone out and asked people, what are the metrics that you're actually using in AI implementations? And so if you get that QR code, you can go and see a bunch of them that people have told us that they're using. Finally, we look at day-to-day best practices and how are we integrating those into our work. Now, coming down to the last one of cross-cutting challenges, we look first at this general positive AI mindset. What are people thinking about it? Second, we look at reliable data quality. Third, we're talking about low resistance to change in general. And then finally, we look at this role-specific tailoring. We can't just go in and think that everybody's going to use AI in the exact same way. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. When we think about this, we have something that's called the AI integration framework, a really simple way to start thinking about how to bring AI into your organization. First, we think about what is my work? What's the work that's always human exclusive? Second, we think about what's the for me work, the work that can be automated in tasks. Then we think about with me work. So if you take these ideas of my work, the for me work, and the with me work, you can start going in and you can actually plot anybody's role in the organization. You can plot their tasks. This builds it out a little bit so you can see maybe some of the specifics of what you might ask in each of these categories. But what you would start with would actually be something that would look. Actually, I see that you need to, I'm going to get into some of your pictures that you're taking and just wave as you're taking those. Here, what you would start with is this empty map. Okay, and then you go in and just say, what are the tasks for any role? And then which categories can it fall into? So we can go in and we can do this for a change management practitioner and what their role might look like. You might do this for an organizational development professional. Whatever the roles are, you can use this framework to start guiding that conversation. This is the same framework, just built out a little bit more, where you can look at individually, team, organization. This, by the way, just came out last week, so I would dare say that you are the first group to actually be introduced to this new way of thinking about it. Yeah, so get a picture of that. Super interesting in what's coming up there. So you actually have a copy of all these questions in the books that you received at the beginning. So if you look, I think it's on page 2 or page 3, you have a copy of the diagnostic. We've taken these, put them into a simple framework where you can sit down with the people who are leading AI in your organization and say, how are we doing with these 20 conditions? Are we doing well or not well? If you want to know a little bit about the background and the research behind it, this is a report that has the research behind the diagnostic. It's just a 10 to 12 page summary of that. So the goal here is that you would activate this research by sitting down with a group, going through the items, and here it's really not, the number you get isn't as critical as the conversation and discussion you'll have about these points. That's where the real value is in this. So I would encourage you to do that very much. If you want an online version, you've got that here in this QR code. I will tell you this is just a beta, so it will be going away in just a little bit. But we are replacing that with this new online, really slick experience. With this, kind of moving forward, I'm also really excited to announce on behalf of Marg that they're going to be launching a new 3-day certification program that has a specific focus on AI, on digital transformation, and also on the healthcare space. So if there's any interest in those, a fascinating step forward. So with that said, I am so pleased to kind of open the curtain now and welcome you once again to SYNAPSE and an incredible experience ahead. Thank you.